start. Okay, this is the 60th Security Thought Leadership webinar. We've been here we've been here every week, every Tuesday and Thursdays and some other days too since it all started. And today our 60th, so a bit of a special occasion. And of course a special topic and another special panel. And the idea of thought leadership is that we critique today the type of security that we have in order that we get a better type of security tomorrow. And that's the key really of thought leadership, to critique, not to just let things go by. And the topic today is one that has emerged from previous webinars. We've heard a bit about secured by design, and there are those along the way who've seen it as something of an outdated concept. And there are those who have seen it as core to good security practice. And so we'll be taking a number of these concepts over the next few weeks and looking at them with a panel about just where we are with it. And we've got 4 panelists today who are rather, who come at this from quite different angles. I should say, my grateful thanks to that we're linked up. We've got Secured by Design here today, and one of the elements of that is secured environments, which is sort of the management aspects of it. And you'll hear a bit about the scheme itself from one of our panelists in a minute. So I'm going to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. And once they've done that, I'll invite them to make their opening statements. And once they've done that, we'll go to questions. So if you do have a question, can I invite you please to use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screens, and then we'll endeavour to get to you. The quicker you get your questions in, the quicker we can come to you. All right, let's start off then and find out more about our panelists. And let's go first to Bruce. Bruce.
Good afternoon, Martin. Great to be here, and thanks for the invite. Yeah, I'm Bruce Braithwaite. I head up the security consulting practice at Bureau Happold. We're a global engineering business, and I've been in the security consulting world for more years than I tend to admit. I'm a chartered security professional. I have a couple of degrees in security-related matters, and have worked all over Africa, Europe, and Australia, having lived in Australia for 8 years as well. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you very much indeed, Bruce. And he's doing a PhD, I should add quickly. Let's go from the safe world of, well, no, from the world of Bath to what sounds like a safer world of Perth. Mark, please introduce yourself.
Good evening or afternoon, as it is in some parts of the world. Mark Hainsworth. I'm a principal director with Cox Architecture, based in Western Australia. Predominantly work in the justice security field of architecture around custodial facilities, courts, youth justice, specialist high value commodity storage facilities, and have been working in that field for about 30 years.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So from Perth back to the United Kingdom, and Michael Brook, please introduce yourself, Michael.
Yes, hello everybody. Michael Brook, I'm Head of Operational Services at Police Crime Prevention Initiatives. One of their initiatives is Secured by Design. I've been with PCPI for the last 10 years, and prior to that, I was a police officer for 30 years with West Yorkshire Police. And I'll leave it there, thank you.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. And finally, back to Australia. And Greg, can you introduce yourself, please, Greg?
Yeah, good evening, Greg Howlett. I'm a principal director, like Mark, of Cox Architecture. Unlike Mark, my work's broader. I work on all sorts of projects, but once upon a time I was Mark's boss. Now we're equal in that we're both principal directors, and we still work very closely together. We're both located in our Perth studio here in Western Australia.
Greg, thank you very much indeed. Well, what a panel, what a panel. Many of you write to me and say how good we are at getting experts from around the world, and I think we've done it again. Let's hear them speak though now. So what I'm going to do, as always, is ask each of our panelists for 3 minutes to make an opening statement, their views on this topic of secured by design. Outdated concept or core? Bruce, you first, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Martin. Well, definitely not an outdated context as far as I'm concerned. And if anything, I would say that it is a growing context. If we look at security as a requirement in the world today, everyone knows that through the Maslow's theory. Security is a basic human desire. But the other thing that people tend to forget is that behind every single security risk, there is a human being. Security risks do not occur without humans. And my view is that the only way that you can deal with security risks is to design effective control measures. There's no point in just throwing something into try and block a hole. So in my view, secured by design is what it's all about. It must be taken into account from word go, and whatever you are building, whether it be a building, as Mark and Greg will talk about, whether it be a system, which may be an electronic security system, or whether it be a management system, which is a set of processes that people are following to secure some sort of an environment. Unless you design that security properly, you're wasting your time. Now, I think it's even more important today if we think about the world that we live in and we consider the interaction between technology, people, the built environment, and where that is moving to. Because what happens now is that no longer are we really only concerned about the interaction between the person and the built environment, but we have to take into account the technological interfaces that take place as well. Now, those may be a building management system, they may be an access control system, but they could also be a camera set on a wall, it could be a sensor. And so the whole Internet of Things is a matter that we need to really, really take into consideration today. Because no longer do you always see the attacker. The attacker can be lurking in the cybersphere, waiting to strike. Unless you get that design so that it encompasses all of those factors, people, systems, and the built environment, you're not going to produce a proper security framework that is going to deliver the level of enterprise protection that you are looking for as a security professional. So yes, I believe that it is still very, very relevant, and in fact becoming more relevant as we go on. Thank you very much.
Bruce, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's go from the world of consultancy to the world of architecture. Mark, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Obviously, in terms of secured by design, is from our perspective is actually a combination of safety and design. And the safety and security go hand in hand, and the two as an equivocal outcome are actually the same thing. Fundamentally, obviously, the world is a slightly changed place with COVID, and what that means for us into the, I suppose, what is the new norm and how that new norm diversifies us in our thinking. Obviously, we've seen a number of changes in terms of statistics going around the globe, which is around crime and how crime has diversified as the world has changed. Everything from rates of burglary have decreased, significantly across the globe, and those statistics are, being, I suppose, interpreted at this point. But really, what happens when we go back to what is the new norm as people start to unlock? Do some of those statistics come back? Do we actually go back to really what is the tried and true tested methods of designing both commercial and residential properties, or actually do we get a new paradigm from that perspective? And obviously, in the interim, we have seen a change from physical crime to cyber crime over the course of the last 6 months. How that diversifies back into buildings will be an interesting one. I think the secured by design component is really clearly understanding the risk and how that risk is then mitigated. Is it overt, covert? Is the risk through a planned, sustained level of security breach? Is it impulsive? Is it vandalism? And as the community sizes grow and change, we'll actually see a morphing of really what are those solutions for some of those current challenges that we've, I suppose, in many cases, each city, whilst they're quite different, the consistency across the globe is actually proving to be pretty consistent.
Mark, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed. And another interesting set of comments we'll come back to, I'm sure. Okay, let's go from Australia back to the United Kingdom. And Michael Brook. Michael, your opening statement, please.
Yes, hi. I'm going to start by saying that I'm almost disappointed, Martin, at the title of this session. If I was to create one for myself, I think I'd probably start off by something like secured by design is the best crime prevention initiative in the world. Discuss. Because quite rightly, as a couple of speakers have already mentioned, to design things correctly in the first place is the most efficient by far, and that's where our focus, without a doubt, most definitely is. Sometimes feels a little bit like SBD, secured by design, can be on a trial. I'm sort of sat here thinking, what witnesses will I bring to my case? You know, is it who's going to be prosecuting? But just to get the structure in place with regards to our initiative, you know, secured by design has actually existed since 1989. It goes back to the days when if you found a key in the street, the likelihood was that it would fit about 1 in 6 doors nearby, because back then there was just no physical security standards that you could use. And so something had to be done to encourage planners and indeed industry to do something about crime. And as I say, that began way back in 1989. And so therefore last year we celebrated 30 years. So we must be doing something right. As I mentioned when I gave my introduction, Secured by Design is just one of 9 initiatives that fall under the like house of brands, if you like, of police crime prevention initiatives. And I'm not going to waste people's time going through all those 9, but I will just bang out the brief email address of policecpi.com, and you can go there and read about those 9 initiatives. One of them is about cyber. It's the Police Digital Security Centre. And of course, as you've mentioned, Martin, one of them is also the secured environments, which of course hangs its hat very closely with Secured by Design. As I say, we've been working at this now since 1989. Independent academic evidence-based research always demonstrates that we prevent crime. And there's 2 chief ways in which we seek to do that. One is by the physical design of the environment, which by and large, I don't think the public will actually recognise as having a part to play in keeping them safe. And then the second thing, of course, is when that design perhaps hasn't worked, you're resorting to physical security measures. The obvious ones being doors and windows, but it's beyond that. And the achievements speak for themselves. There's been some research in Scotland where crime figures were down 87% when SBD properties were compared to non-SBD properties. So those are some significant findings. Our mission, if you like, the mission statement that we have as a house of brands active in the crime prevention world is to support policing and communities by preventing crime where we live, work and socialise. So we are attempting to be all-encompassing, and hopefully we are becoming more visible as a consequence of our approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And can I just remind the audience that if you've got a question, please use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Get it in now and we'll endeavour to get to it. We've got questions flowing in. And that's before our final opening statement. So let me go to that now. And Greg, your thoughts, please.
Right, thanks very much. Well, I guess as we've sort of touched on, our company does a range of works, including a heavy emphasis. There is quite a significant part of our workload is in the sort of more hardcore justice corrections environment. And that's an area that Mark picks up and manages it across the group. As I said in my initial statement, I'm very much involved in all sorts of building types. And what we're finding now is, whereas security was something that we considered with those prisons, police stations, courthouses, etc. It is now very much a part of every building that we look at. I think one of the things in the statement that was put forward to us, one of the opening sentence said something along the lines of security professionals have long been persuaded that the design of the environment is crucial to making it less attractive to criminals. The problem with that statement for me is potentially, depending on how you go about your security, you might make it less attractive for everyone. So what we need to do is find some kind of balance where the security issues need to be prioritized as applicable to the building type. Given something like a prison, which Mark might be working on, security will trump everything, whereas an office building is just one of many issues to be considered. Only today I did a presentation to our state design review panel, and there were 10 issues that we had to address, including things like context and character, landscape, built form, functionality, and the 8th item, which is a mandatory item to be addressed, being security. The fact that security even appears as a mandatory item to be addressed itself is significant in where it has come in our 21st century society. I was born and bred here in Perth. You know, it's a small city. It's grown into a city of about 1.5 million now. But as a child growing up in Perth, nobody locked their front door, even if the house was empty. Cars were left open. The thought of being burgled just wasn't on anyone's mind at all. Whereas now we're in a very different society where security in all building types needs to be considered. And I think, you know, I suspect in time, rather than being number 8 on the 10-point checklist, I suspect security will find its way closer to the top. Interestingly, on that 10-point checklist that I had to look at today, the item number 10 was aesthetics. And most people you ask, not architects of course, would probably argue that that's all that architects are interested in. And it was kind of a really interesting thing that aesthetics got down to being number 10 on what we had to do today. So I'm very keen to make sure that how we go about the design of buildings, that security is a critical issue, and security by design is very important that we do it, but it's one of a number of issues that we need to address, and depending on the building type, doesn't necessarily be the major item that dictates how we go about design.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, look, listen, panel, thank you very much indeed for your opening statements. We've got lots of questions coming in and they're flowing in, so do put your questions to us. We'll endeavour to get through them. This is where we go back and we sort out the panel, give them some questions. Now, let me start with Greg, actually, and then I'm going to come to you, Michael. And Simon Chan has got a question. And the point is that I'm interested in the amount of attraction this has, Greg, Michael, because there is a sense in which, and I guess it's back to my point to you, Michael, the reason why I'm saying it's outdated is we can point to many of the successes, but Simon Chan's starting point in this question is, has the security design got enough traction currently, let alone is it an outdated concept? Has it got traction? For 30 years, one might argue, you'd expect it to be endemic to what's going on in almost every building going, by one argument. Greg, do you sense that you were slightly more positive in your statement there? In Australia, set in the context, is secured by design and endemic thinking in across the design portfolio? Greg, first.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. But I guess, as I said in my opening statement, it is one of a number of things that we need to consider, and we need to prioritise it depending on what the building type is. So I think, you know, prisons, it's a no-brainer. It's one of the key issues. Schools, it's becoming more and more important. I attended a security conference once again with Mark in Chicago a few years back, and we're marveling at, you know, in the US, there was this sort of propensity to sort of basically have the school ready to be locked down at any given time in the event there's a shooter in the vicinity. And it was all about security, metal detectors, secure perimeters, the whole bit. Whereas something like that is just anathema here. And as I say, it can really severely impact on the experience of being in that building if you've had to go to that extreme. I guess that's part and parcel of living in the US with their gun wars and such. But certainly it's not something that we would enter into lightly in Australia.
Thank you very much, Nico. Michael, come to you. So here's the point, Michael. This is the point about thought leadership. The question's going along the lines of, it may well be a very good idea, but it hasn't been widely adopted enough. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are these, that we try to influence wherever we possibly can. Obviously, people maybe will be familiar with some of the guides that we produce that are topic specific, such as schools, etc. Certainly housing. It's chiefly because of our activities that we have things such as we have a physical security building regulation in England now for new homes, and indeed that's just about to go through its next review, and we'll be making arguments to strengthen that. We are also responsible for training the designing out crime officers that are active throughout the whole of the UK, approximately 200 of them. And one of the things that we seek to empower them to do is to involve themselves at a local level with local plans, whilst maybe people would say at the centre, we are very much responsible for dealing with consultations. I mean, there's one out now, there's a government white paper, The Future of Planning. So we will be providing a response to that, seeking to strengthen links to designing out crime and crime prevention wherever we can.
But is there a danger, Michael? Is there a sense in which, given how good it is, and I've read the research, I mean, it's very supportive. Is there a sense it's underachieved? The concept of secured by it's underachieved. It's nowhere near as widely adopted as it perhaps should have been, at least in the UK for a minute.
I don't know if you can say it's underachieved. I know that some people are more conscious about the additional cost that designing something against crime may bring. I've always argued that a poor design need cost rather a good design need cost no more than a poor design. You're going to put doors and windows on places anyway. External environments, creating defensible space, dealing with landscaping and lighting, these sorts of things that make us feel safe are all really achievable and can be done at very low cost. The academic research, I say academic, and I play on this point because the police are very capable of doing lots of research, but it would be their own research, and there would be people, maybe not people on this call today, who would say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? You are the police, you're just massaging your own figures. But when it's independent and academic, then the value of that research is it stands the test. And the huge figures that come out, people clearly should not be ignoring it. We continue to try and knock on everybody's door, and all that we always ask is if somebody just can get a door open in terms of policy, and we'll put our foot through there. We will do all that we can to encourage others to work with us, and indeed, as I think it was Bruce that said, doing it as early as possible. Okay, Mike, I'm going to stop you there. Mike, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. I want to move on, so I want to bring some of the other panelists in. I'm going to come to one of the points that some of the questions are asking about whether we're talking about the concept of secure by design or security design, because of course, secure by design is a particular concept. Let me come to you next, Bruce. I wonder whether, in your view, Bruce, as a consultant, whether you could help us with this. You've been a supporter, you said in your opening statement. Is that just of the principle that it's wise to take account of design in security projects, or the specific concept of secured by design? Bruce?
I think both, to be honest, Martin. So I'm a great supporter of the secured by design program that runs here in the UK. I think it's done the world of good in certain places. And let's be honest about it, you can pick holes in any program that's out there. You can always find one or another way of playing with statistics. I think the program is good. for me, what it has really done, it has opened up the eyes of the construction industry, the design industry, and the security industry. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was that secured by design program when it first came out, before when I first came across it, that changed my whole viewpoint about how to approach security as a consultant. So instead of having a very ad hoc approach to it, I adopted the same sort of approach that the Secured by Design program had. And so I've taken it on to another level. I've taken it on to a different level that I use throughout my business, whether it be securing a new stadium, which we've done a few of recently, probably the best known in North London, to whether it's that, or whether it's a pump house for a water board facility down in the bottom end of Devon somewhere. And as the landscape, the security landscape has changed, and we are now faced with more than just physical threats, etc., I've adopted that same principle in a more enterprise approach to how you advise your clients about how to secure their assets. Because if you adopt this process of thinking about it right up front, understanding what the threats are, dealing with them right up front, designing it into the core, the actual core of whatever it is that you're doing, it's the best possible way you can do it, because you're looking at it from a holistic point of view, and you're not just trying to be that little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike.
Okay. I'm going to come to you, Mark. Now, Mark, in your opening statement, you made the point that change from physical to technical may bring about an impact on the buildings. Now, John Green's asked a question here, and he's made the point, architects can be resistant to security recommendations aesthetically and develops as resistant to cost. Do you think that security needs to be written more into building regulations in order that it may get a better priority, or is that already the case in Australia? Mark, where do we sit on where we go from here? Mark?
I think fundamentally the principles around security doesn't always have to be a physical element. In 80% of the cases, you know, even in the high security world in which sort of I probably live and breathe, you know, probably only 20% of the building context is secure. The rest is actually done through covert planning, decent planning through lines of sight, lighting. And if you apply that to, say, you know, residential models, you know, we all know that the best way to reduce vandalism, physical damage is to activate spaces. Well, for instance, if people in those spaces don't feel safe, they don't go to those spaces. By decent planning and actually designing it properly through nighttime activities, through lighting, and we understand what security lighting represents now. It's not floodlit, it's about layered lighting. It's about lighting, you know, into the shadows rather than just lighting the path. It's beyond the borders. All of those elements are actually already there in most legislation that I can see. I'm no expert on secured by design in Britain. However, most countries have similar, if not as robust as probably the ones we're talking about today. But most good consultants understand those basic principles, and I think in most cases those things don't cost any money, and it doesn't have to be bars and windows and security grills. It's actually about security through a design process rather than security through actually a physical treatment. For, in most cases, the vast majority, yes, there are going to be elements that you physically need to be secure, but in most cases through really it being brought to the table, it's a bit to some degree, I suppose the world we're in 20 years ago, ESD was something we applied to design. It was a bolt-on. It's now embedded in everything we do. You know, we look at natural light, we look at the ability to save power, we look at how we generate power, we look at the quality of the space we're providing. And as ESD, I think security is probably at that early stages of being in every part of what we do as a design consultant.
But Mark, but very quickly, because I want to bring on another topic. Why? Given its history, its importance, it's an essential need. It's been around a long. Why are we at the early stages?
Mainly because I think it's at the forefront of really probably of our consciousness of what's in front of us at the moment. I think, you know, we're all understanding how I think criminologists have actually been out and really done a reasonable job of understanding why we have certain problems, and we can put solutions in place. I suspect every country is going to be slightly different, but you know, I mean, COVID's one of those elements. I mean, 9/11 was a watershed moment for commercial buildings. People started saying, well, these things can actually happen. We work in the Middle East, and the Middle East have been doing it for a lot longer than we have. Than we have. Greg and I both have spent probably 20 years undertaking buildings in that region, and security is embedded in what they do, mainly because they've lived and breathed it for a lot longer than we've had to do. We've been something being cocooned.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. In fact, Greg, I'll come to you on that issue. I'm going to ask you to be succinct here, because I want to get a few more issues in. And Michael Gibbs has asked a point, a former panellist actually. If I could put it in a nutshell, what difference is COVID-19 going to make to this? Greg, any thoughts on that? And I'll come to Michael for your brief thoughts on this too.
Yeah, well, COVID-19 it's pretty interesting, in particular here in WA, where we've been only affected a little. So probably we're not, well, we are aware of it. And the reason why we're enjoying lifestyle pretty much as normal here in Perth is because we were very quick to act on it. So we did implement lockdowns, we did implement quarantine measures. There was security when the quarantine, they've been run by police and the military. It wasn't in Victoria where they ran it with private security guards. It's been an absolute disaster. So I think we've kind of learned a lot about it. I think the COVID thing's as much about hygiene, personal hygiene, and just the way we act as against, you know, the sort of social distancing and the numbers of people that are in any place at any given time.
Okay, I'm going to try and get Michael in if I could. Michael, on this point, COVID-19, how is that affecting? One might think it's a great opportunity for Secured by Design to show its relevance to a modern context with a different twist. Very briefly, Michael, because I want to move on to the next question. Is it?
Well, we've been asked to do some work. In fact, we did some work and published it recently. Certainly during the initial lockdown, where we were all on lockdown for a period of several months, that was making business premises vulnerable to crime. Whilst maybe the criminal was shifting their focus, because previously, you know, the home would have been empty during the day, but now people were at home because they couldn't go to work. So the criminal's focus changed. So we actually created a number of guides with regards to that particular topic. I mean, in the future, I used to spend maybe 20,000 miles a year on the road, and now I've not been anywhere since March, and this has been my world. So just getting around and doing business and travelling, and whether HS2 is going to get scrapped as a consequence of us not having to travel to London as often, who knows? But those have been some of the things that I think we've been looking at in the background, just how the criminal is going to change focus, because people's daytime habits have now changed dramatically.
Are they available to the world from your website, these documents, Michael, or not?
It was part of. I shall check on that and populate it on the chat after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can always circulate it after.
I believe there was one done about cyber as well, because obviously more people working online.
Okay, if you could, that'd be very grateful. Let's make it available. Okay, let me move on then. Mark, James Gribbin basically says, is security an afterthought that comes in once everything's already been costed. In other words, one of the issues I think that led me to say, is it an outdated concept? Which slightly tongue-in-cheek, of course, as thought leadership points are. One of the points I was trying to make is architects haven't grabbed this and run with it in quite the way one might have imagined. I mean, is it an afterthought often, Mark?
I think there's two components. I think it's a planning. I think most good planners, I think good design practitioners, it's embedded. I think there's probably a gap between from planning stage to design stage, and at some point someone undertakes a risk assessment or a risk profile and indicates that there may be something that needs to be applied. I suspect physical security tends to get done as an afterthought. I think covert security, which is all around lines of sight, intuitive security, opportunities for people to pass. I think that gets done at planning level, at least in the projects that we're involved in, and in some of the major planning, everything from rail stations through to community designs of housing estates. I think it's embedded in many of the principles. I just don't think many people actually see it. To some degree, it's intuitive, and they believe it's done for aesthetics, when in some cases it's actually done for security needs.
Okay, Bruce, an afterthought?
Um,
More often than not. I'm not talking about the ones you do. I'm just talking about, an assessment across the board. You don't hear it mentioned every time, Bruce.
well, I disagree with you there, Martin. I think that it is mentioned every time, but it's the first thing to get chopped out. And then when we get to the stage of it actually being constructed, then there's a eureka moment, and it's, oh gosh, we need to do that. Well, in most cases it was there to start with, but in the first round of value engineering it got chopped out.
Yeah, just on that, Martin,
yeah, Greg.
I was just going to say, I think, as I mentioned in the presentation I did today, there were 10 points. And this is a state design review panel, which you have to go through to get your approvals through. And security is one of those items. So you really need to address it. What I actually think with security, and it's a bit like environmental design 20 years ago, we'd put some initiatives in there as solar collectors, or, even quite simple things. And once again, you'd put it there, and that, as Bruce was saying, the first thing when you got into a value engineering side, it would get jettisoned out. What did happen is that subsequently, for instance, the state government said, well, we're not going to rent space in a building that's not got 4.5 stars. So all of a sudden, it became part of a design. It became something that could be quantified and valued. And I think in security, it's a similar thing that's happening now, where people who understand workplace, the modern workplace, realize that security is an important component of that. And so by incorporating that in our designs, we can differentiate ourselves from the other architects who may not be doing it. And so our product becomes superior, and the market understands it and is prepared to pay for it.
Yeah, Mark, very quickly on this. I mean, you made the point about the link between security and safety. I mean, isn't this a secured by design concept dream opportunity? That there's the world worrying about how places are designed. There's a concept. Here we go. Here's the moment in time. We'll set it as a safety one, right, as much as a security one. Mark, very briefly, running out of time.
Yep. So absolutely. I mean, in Australia, we have Safer Cities, Neighbourhood Watch. They're actually are secured by design, but they're sold as a safety opportunity. Again, people want to buy into that. They actually take the statistics and say, well, I'm actually going to be safer. It's a bit like airbags in a car. We don't really care about airbags in a car. What we do care about is safety. And people will pay a premium. I wouldn't say a premium. People will actually put that on their list of criteria. When you go to purchase a house or you go to rent a commercial product, most tenants nowadays want to know what is the safety features of that building. Does it have speed gates? Can they control access? Can they actually control garbage? Are they going to get fires? Can they get out of the building? To me, all of those things are all embedded in actually the design.
Martin, I remember one developer offering an upgrade for security features for new homes that they were designing. A little bit like you could upgrade your worktops in your kitchen to marble or granite. But of course, it then sparked the question by the customer, well, what am I getting as part and parcel of what I'm buying? You know, why am I having to upgrade my security? I expect that to be there from the start. And that's not one thing that people seem to expect to have to upgrade.
Okay, Michael, just very quickly, there's a few questions coming in about the role of secure by design. And the question is about whether enough is being done to get architects and the relevant people on board. So very quickly, do you think enough is being done to engage them in the security world? Very quickly.
You can always do more, but got to say, you know, we are a not-for-profit organisation. We are limited in terms of our reach, and we are very much dependent on that wider police family to assist us in that aim.
And do they assist you? Do they assist you?
Absolutely, they do. There's 200 design and out crime officers employed by 43 police forces throughout the UK, who, of course, we educate on this subject under the banner of the Police Crime Prevention Academy. And one of the things that they are capable of delivering is an ARIBA accredited crime prevention design presentation. And I understand that is by far and away one of the most popular REBA presentations that is requested. They are very active. Some of those individuals actually occupy seats in local authority planning departments. And we have to rely upon people such as that and our wider partners, because one of the things that I would have said earlier, had I thought on, would be that we can't do all that we do alone. You know, we probably punch way above our weight. Secured by design, if you just think about the number of people in secured by design, you know, we're talking about a figure which is less than 10 individuals. So you can see we've got to look elsewhere for support. And I think we've actually been very successful in doing that.
Okay, Mike, I'm going to stop you because I want to get another view in. I want to get Bruce in here. And I've got a question here from Stuart Williams, who wonders whether there needs to be more freedom for in using the secure by design concept. And Darren Nicholas, who makes this point about cost, as a number of the questions are. Bruce, in this world of commercial security which you're in, the hard world, brutal world of consultancy, is it the case that cost is an impediment, that it's an afterthought, and then it becomes ugly, and it feeds this whole desire? You've got 1 minute, Bruce, to answer a complex question at the most. Bruce.
No, I really do believe if you go about it the right way, and you get in there right at the ground floor, that cost should not be an impediment. As Mark said earlier on, there are so many things that can be done for very little cost, and I think that we need to just get that mindset in, that do it at the beginning, get in at the start. And I think that's going to be helped by certain things that have happened in the UK in recent times. And I'll just mention two, Grenfell and the Manchester Arena. I think the inquiries into those terrible disasters are going to push, especially planning departments, and probably the design and architectural professions down the line, to make sure that they get it in right at the beginning and design it in.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'll tell you what, everybody, we're definitely going to return to this subject in due course, because lots of really, really good points being made here. Let me, as a final statement from each of you, just 10 seconds if you would. Here's the thing. What next for secure by design? What's the key thing that either is a barrier to it being adopted or needs to be done to make it adopted? Let me go to Mark first.
I think, you know, whilst the police is probably your pushing the element, it should be more statutory councils that are pushing it. In Australia, that's what happens. Most of the discussions around design around security, especially residential, is actually pushed by statutory organisations. They want to see how you're achieving it.
Thank you very much indeed. Michael, what needs to be done next?
I'd echo some of that Marcus said there about making it a statutory requirement. I'd love to see it absolutely fundamental to planning decisions going forward. Some planners impose formal conditions, some argue against the legality of doing that, and yet the fact that some do obviously demonstrates to me that it's highly possible. So I'd like to see that happen and become more widespread.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. Greg, if you wouldn't mind, just 10 seconds.
I think it basically is mandated here in Western Australia. I think it will become the norm. It has become the norm. It will be part of it, in much the same way as once upon a time universal access was a selling point for something additional, whereas now it's just you'd be crazy not to incorporate it, and it is legislated.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a good tone. And Bruce, finally, your comment from you, just 10 seconds.
Whilst I respect the wonderful work that Secured by Design are doing, I think that what we need is a united voice in the UK. The BRE, Sabre, Secured by Design, there's just too many different things. We need to get one particular story going and getting it pushed through.
Thank you very much indeed. Listen, everybody, thank you very much indeed, panel. One of the things they tell me about thought leadership panels is make sure that you leave it with plenty more to be discussed. Well, we've definitely done that today. Absolutely fabulous. And thank you so much for your questions. We'll definitely come back to this topic and definitely start to think about some of the issues that have cropped up here. I'm very, very grateful to your questions. Just to let you know that when we're talking about things being done well, the Outstanding Security Performance Awards, the OSPAs, the nominations are still open in Romania and Germany, but you're running out of time. And they're now open in South Africa until the 15th of February. So start to look at that if you wouldn't mind. And also to let you know, why not come along to a free thought leadership summit and an OSPAs award ceremony in the Benelux on the 24th of November, a chance to socialise as well. You can either get it from the OSPAs website or from that address. Do come along, it's free. And finally, we'll be back here next Tuesday with another thought leadership webinar, another topic right at the forefront of debate, where we'll be talking about investigation and investigators. Is this a murky world or one of hidden gems? We'll certainly find out more then. So thank you once again to my panel. Thank you once again to the audience who've raised some absolutely fantastic issues. We'll definitely need to pick up on those. And thanks once also to Hannah Miller in the background, who does all the magic work, the more important work than me, really. But to say to all of you, I hope you're able to join us next Tuesday again. But wherever you are in the world, until we meet again, stay safe.